Now that's real. Rachel Bowman, welcome. Thank you for coming on. Real Faith Conversations, episode 2. Yeah, it's here. It's finally real. I think episode 1 went really well. This episode, we're going to dive into religious education, right? If I can pronounce it correctly. Religious education for all the folks out there.
There it is.
And so let's dive right in. This is a touchy subject, right? For a lot of different people. A lot of people have experience with religious education. Some really great, some really bad. Hopefully we get to touch on multiple viewpoints here today. And particularly since we're in a Catholic church, we're going to be focused on Catholic education, right? Whether that be Catholic school, CCD, prep, or anything else. And so we're going to dive into that. And in no way do we want to make this an attack on any of those institutions or any particular institution or Catholic schools in general. So.
Right. And that's something that is definitely an important thing to note is, we're not coming after anybody. We're not trying to belittle it or make it any less than it is. Under good leadership and, looking at the time that things are happening, things change, right? And so it's important to remember that we're talking about our personal experiences and how it affected us, and trying to be very real in that sense. But we're still going to make sure we hit those important points of reasons why it is, something that is good for people and can be something that, really brings someone deeper in their faith. So just to make sure everyone understands, we're not coming after anybody. It's meant to be a conversation about something that we both kind of had similar experiences with.
Yeah. So talk about your experience a little bit. What's your background in religious education?
Right. So I went to a Catholic school for about 6 years. Beginning around 3rd grade until 8th grade when I graduated and went to high school. And I think one of the bigger things that kind of was difficult for me to get used to was self-expression and what they were kind of allowing you to do. So there was a lot of rules put in place of what you could wear, how many bracelets you could have, what kind of earrings you could have, could you color your hair or not, And it was things like that at points made it a little difficult to agree with the authority that was there, because it was, I can't wear more than 3 hairbands on my arm, it's and it was things like that I feel like I personally had my own little run-ins with myself, while, there definitely were other people, it didn't bother them at all, I was definitely more of a rebellious kid in that sense, tuck in your shirt. I never tucked in my shirt, stuff like that, where it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was enough that I kind of, I would get in trouble for things like that. They would kind of be like, oh, come on, you know what the uniform is and stuff like that. But that was really, I think, the point in that school where I was just like, I'm not feeling like I have the freedom to be me as much as I'd like to, even at that age.
And I don't think that's unique to you, right? A lot of kids feel rebellious at that age.
Oh yeah.
Right? And you went to Catholic elementary school, middle school, and then high school you went to public school, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. And in that transition, what was that like? Because you started in, Catholic school. Everyone usually says oh, Catholic school's better, right? And if you always hear that, if you're around a church or Catholic community, you hear, oh, put your kid in Catholic school. What was that like for you?
Like the transition between Catholic school and the public school?
Yeah, you've been in, Catholic school your entire life, basically.
Right.
What was that like then leaping into public school? Because there's a lot of perception around Catholic school. It's the perfect club. It's you're a bad person if you don't go there, right? Or your family is bad if you don't go there. I don't know. Some of these things may come up, right? Or everything is perfect at Catholic school. There's some of these perceptions, or sometimes people make fun of that, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
What was that like?
I personally was lucky enough where when it came to things like church and the fact that I went to Catholic school, it was more like almost like a shock value, like, oh, you did that for that many years, versus being made fun of or being bullied for any of that kind of stuff. I luckily didn't have to go through that at all. It was definitely more just like, oh, that's cool. I wouldn't have guessed. But I definitely say that transition was a weird one. A lot of, we wear uniforms, right? So every day you're wearing the same thing. You don't have to think about what you're, putting on each day. And so going to high school, it was like, all right, now I have to have a different outfit every day, or at least something like that. And obviously there's the lack of religious classes, the lack of religion just around anyway, and I didn't hear too many kids talking a lot about church or other things like that. So I think that was probably the biggest thing for me, was just the fact that this whole portion of my life that I had gone through of learning a lot about religion and taking tests and doing assignments and studying for it was suddenly kind of taken out. But then there was a lot that was kind of filling that, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, it wasn't taking its place, but it was stuff I didn't necessarily get to have before, like that, self-expression, getting to wear what I want, and getting to kind of present myself in a way, well, like, this is who I am, versus I'm another kid who looks like all these other kids, we're all wearing the same thing. But it was a relatively simple move from one to the other. I think it was just kind of finding, okay, who am I now? I went through these 6 years of kind of being almost the same as everyone else, or at least feeling like that. So it was this big, like, all right, who am I trying to be at this point, especially being a young adult and kind of getting to, 15, 16 and trying to figure out who am I,
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that you wanted that freedom of expression while you were in school, while you were sort of finding out who you were and playing with friends, finding out new friends, who you like to hang around. Is that correct, what I'm hearing there? That freedom of expression?
Yeah, definitely. And that was a big part. It's a big part of who I am now, so it was something that I felt like I was able to do enough of, where I wasn't really losing myself, but it still wasn't to a point where I felt like confident in being me. There still felt like there were parts where I was just like, I'm not sure, whether it was from a reaction of somebody else, whether it was, a reaction of my parents even, like, I'm not really sure where I'm sitting here. I know I like these things, but there's this whole empty space of what goes here. And I think to a point that is what brought me back to really wanting to be part of the church community. I've been part of it just because of my parents and because of school, but now it was my decision to do that. And I think that was extremely important for me, being like a real member of the community and not just every Sunday or Christmas and Easter,
And that middle school and high school range, or I guess elementary to middle school to high school range, is one of the most crucial times for someone to grow into who they are, right?
Agreed.
You have a lot of emotions going on there, a lot of things are happening. What is this thing we called life, right? I mean, I think that never stops, but it's heightened in that age range. So when we dive into the freedom of expression, what are some of the downfalls and some of the religious education side? For instance, for me, I only went to Catholic school, kindergarten and first grade, and then I went to a charter school, right? So I didn't really get some of that part because I was just, what is 2 + 2, right? Like, those are the types of things that I was probably thinking about at the time. And for me, I would say, for me personally, I had a pretty negative experience at that time, just because of the people that were there at that specific school. Not to say that this is the same for every school. However, simple things like not being able to count on your fingers. Like, when you talk about these rules, a lot of people associate Catholic school or religious education with a bunch of rules that you must follow this, you must follow that. And I got a taste of that early on. No counting your fingers. The wardrobe has to be the same every day, which personally for me, I liked. I liked not being able to think about the clothes. But I understand there's a moment of expression in your clothing for the day, right? So for me, I really didn't get to feel that. So can you describe, what is that like when you are placed in a school where you have a uniform, you can't wear the makeup, you can't wear the jewelry? I mean, look at you right now. You have makeup on, you have jewelry. I know this isn't the extent of what you you could go further than that, right? With your wardrobe,
Definitely, yeah.
with your expression. So what is that like? Can you kind of, for the audience, describe what that's like?
More of like how it felt not being able to as much, or
Yeah, like when you have all these rules placed on you, right? For whether it be clothing, makeup, whatever it is, what is that like when you say, "Hey, I want to express myself, but I can't"?
I think to a point it almost feels like it's being kept from you, like it's almost a bad thing. There were definitely points where I felt like getting in trouble for things as simple as having the winged eyeliner on or having more than one bracelet on, and it was like, are these really things that we should be calling out young kids about, who are really just trying to figure out who they are at this point, even if it is through something small like wearing dangling earrings,
Yeah.
and like I said, it was kind of like, am I doing something wrong? Like, what's wrong with what I'm doing? And of course I understand, having a uniform, trying to keep it up to a certain code, because if you let one kid do something, you have to let everybody to do something, and that kind of takes away from what they're trying to do, and I understand that. But as a kid, it kind of just felt like I'm doing something wrong, when in reality it's just me trying to find what makes me happy when I'm wearing it, or what makes me feel confident when I'm wearing it. And I think it was just a little bit of confusion at that point of, so what's the problem? And being young, you don't always understand, like, it's part of the rules, there's the regulations behind it. And I think I was understanding that enough, but it was still to a point where I was just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm being left out, I feel like I'm being singled out even sometimes for what I'm choosing to do, even if it feels very small to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a kid, that's your whole world. And
Right.
when I'm hearing you say this, it's when we talk about how do you grow as a person, well, if you can't even get past the basic things in your world, right? In the kid's world, in the mind of a kid, then how are you going to get past the more complex things of life, right? Is that what I'm hearing there?
Definitely, yeah.
And the preparation that comes with that. So if all you hear is every day complaints about your shirt not being tucked in or your bracelet being too crazy, I don't know. It kind of turns you off, like that moment of, if this is what faith is, if this is what religious education is, then I don't want any part of that.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Definitely. Like, it's just, to a kid, it just looks like a lot of rules. And if you know any kids, they're usually not very excited about having a lot of rules, and especially when it's something where, school is a time to be away from home, you're with your friends, you're learning and all of that. And it's like there's already so many rules instilled in there, whether you're in the classroom with the teacher, the principal, just the rules of the school. And then you have these extra rules of, and this is what you can and can't wear, and this is what you can and can't do. And like I said, to a point, it's very understood. But then to another, we're kids, and kids aren't going to always, like, understand it to a point where they're like, oh, and that's why I should follow it,
Yeah.
It almost becomes like a fear thing at points, like, oh, I don't want to get yelled at or called out in front of the entire class by the teacher, I don't want to be embarrassed by so-and-so because of this. So it takes away from it a little bit,
Yeah, and from the parents' perspective too, they send their kids to a Catholic school or religious education in general to form into either disciples of Christ, right? In our context, or better human beings in society, or maybe even too, like, oh, maybe the religion thing doesn't matter for some people. Maybe it's more of, oh, I want a quality education for my child that can set them up for the elite colleges, right?
Yeah.
So there's many different aspects of that. So when we got to ask ourselves, are we actually doing what we intended to do as a Catholic community or a faith community, specifically in Catholic schools, to set us up for the expectation, right? You get what I'm saying there?
I do.
And I don't have the answer to that. That's why we're having this conversation, right? You and I had similar negative experiences. I didn't stay there as long as you did, and I also wasn't the same age, and of course we're different genders, so that plays into it as well.
Yeah.
I don't really have an answer to that, and I think that's okay right here, is to just get it out there. What would you say to someone that, like, just being devil's advocate here, what would you say if someone's like, well, that's necessary to have all these rules for discipline, right? And that's what kids need. What would you say to that?
I think discipline is important, most definitely. It's how you learn. It's how you learn, like, right from wrong and get, like, those morals kind of instilled into you. It's definitely important, and it's needed, especially when you have, you know, kids from, what, like first grade, you know, and moving up. And even, like, by the time you're in 8th grade, we're not close to being adults yet, or really thinking for ourselves yet. To a point, definitely, but discipline is still very needed.
Yeah.
When it comes to certain aspects, though, when it comes to embarrassing a child in front of all of their peers because of the length of their skirt, or, you know, it comes to making someone feel less than because they don't know how to write in cursive well yet, or they have a hard time doing that, you know, I think that's where it starts to become hurtful and problematic, because that's not discipline as much as it is kind of just making someone feel like they can't do something, or that they're less than everyone else in their classroom because of it.
Yeah.
You know, when you're embarrassed in front of your whole class, especially your friends, you know, people that you're just around all the time, it sticks with you. And when you're that young, it can become something that really draws you back from, you know, from social interactions, from expression and stuff like that, and just being who you are, because it felt like at this point in time it was problematic. It was a problem. And I need to change that because it was not good. And that's not always the case, you know. Teachers might be having a bad day sometimes, you know. It might be a kid who's not had his shirt tucked in for multiple weeks. It was probably me. And so it's like, it sometimes, you know, things kind of, there's enough things that lead up to it where things happen. It's not necessarily a teacher trying to be, you know, mean or anything like that, but it can come across as, you know, you're wrong, or, you know, whatever else. And that's when the discipline kind of becomes, I don't know, it can really hurt the way a child kind of continues to grow up and continues to, like, be themselves. You know?
In their formation. I'm glad you brought up examples, because I have that kind of brought it out of me. I remember things, even as a kindergarten and first grade, that stuck with me to this day. Like, early on in my childhood, people thought I was mute, like that I couldn't talk. I just didn't talk to anyone. I think part of that is because my teacher was so horrible. She would slam on the desk every time and look under my desk every time I counted on my fingers.
And how old were you there?
I don't know, first grade, whatever that is.
First
you know?
grade, yeah.
And so she put, that was a lasting impression on me, right, on that horrible experience. And then she would keep me out of recess, of course, the whole gender difference, right, where they would separate genders, and all my friends were girls at the time, didn't have any friends on the playground, got punched in the stomach one time, they didn't do anything about it, sat there like, you know, that feeling when you get punched in the
breath,
oh, he's just playing, you know.
And it's funny that you mentioned the you know, being split up and being friends with a lot of girls at the time, so you kind of lost a lot of your friends at that point, like, at least who you're going to talk to and hang out with at recess. I had a very similar experience. There was an incident that happened, and they ended up, you know, splitting us up, boys and girls. And at the time, and even now, you know, I've always kind of been friends with more guys, and that's just who I've connected with a little bit more. So when it came to that point, those are my friends. And when everything was split up and it became like, you got in trouble if you were talking to people on the other side, you know, it was kind of like, well, who am I supposed to talk to then? You know, I'm going to sit here by myself. And it was kind of, your friends are almost taken away from you. And, you know, at the same time, you have kids where, like, you know, girls were all their friends with girls, guys were all their friends with guys, so it didn't bother them at all. But for people like us, where it's like we were friends with the opposite gender at that point, and that was kind of our group, and then suddenly it was just like, no, you know, you can't even stand on the line and talk to them across it. It's kind of like, you stay on your side, you know?
Yeah, and to an adult, right, now we're adults, looking back, it may seem so not important, right? Those facts of, oh, tuck in your shirt, or, you know, you're split up at the playground, or don't count on your fingers. Oh, don't help him. He doesn't know where he is on the page number, right? Those little things, but that's what mattered to a kid at that time. And so that sticks in the back of the mind into adulthood. Now, I'm going to read up some facts. So I think this is a good time to kind of show the realization of how this may affect people. So 49% of people are none, which means no affiliated group, right? This is coming from the Catholic perspective, right? I looked up some Pew research. 49% now identify as none. 79% of former Catholics leave the church before the age of 23, right? So think about that for a little bit. Before the age of 23. Now I'm 24, you're 20. So that's sort of our range there.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that is because of the bad experience, in school, or, maybe a teacher. So this is not just the institutions. This could be, like you said, just a teacher having a bad day. This can go on the parents as well. Parents sometimes have bad days and the kids are like, oh, they hate me,
Mm-hmm. And also looking at parents, like from that perspective, it's when you mention like sometimes it's not even really about the religion. It can be more about the the good education that you're getting out of it and you're paying tuition for.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people where it was just like, oh yeah, when I was going to Catholic school, we went to church sometimes, and then I graduated and it was like, oh, we don't have to do that anymore because you're not going to Catholic school anymore. And it's like you're kind of losing the whole point of the faith, when nothing's done at home to kind of help build that, because you can't just use school to be what builds your Catholic faith, because that's tests, that's assignments, that's studying, that's stress, that's rules, and that's not what the Catholic Church is about, so it's like when things aren't practiced at home, and especially young kids aren't drawn in a way that's going to make them want to be part of it, then what do you have? You just have a bunch of empty hands to kind of offer. And it's like, well, they went to Catholic school. It's like, great. What did they take away from that? Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of rules. Great.
Yeah. And there's another component to that too. And I want to get to that, because if you just think sending your kid to Catholic school or any religious education program, and that's enough, well, that's not the answer, right? I think these programs are also designed for home formation as well, right? The parents get involved and actively educate their children at home and reinforce what's being taught in the classroom. And I think a lot of times that's not happening, right? A lot of times, the parents even need to be educated a little bit on how to form their child, which is complicated. It's complicated. Parenting is complicated. Education is complicated. And when we look at these facts that 39% of young adults who were Catholic are now considered none. They identify as no religion affiliation.
Right.
And today's young adults are, 4 times more likely to say they're none, right? And I wonder how much of it is because of the experience. Now, I know there's some of the older folks listening in that may remember being whipped by nuns. Nuns as the person, right?
Yeah.
Or, the ruler on your hand. I heard those stories. What we're talking about is nothing to that level, right?
Yeah.
We have a different generation there. And so, but here's the reason why I bring that up is because the young people today who weren't whipped with a ruler, but are 3 times more likely to say they're no religious affiliation than the people 65 and older. And those 65 and older folks were the ones, if they went to Catholic school, were probably whipped sometimes if they got out of hand. So I wanted to just bring that up and recognize that there's a generational difference here as well. It's not apples to apples necessarily, because we're talking about a more emotional things, right? And maybe you want to give us some examples of, maybe I remember you saying you stood up in front of the classroom, someone measured your skirt in front of the class.
Yeah. So that wasn't necessarily me. Thank goodness. I would not have.
Oh, okay.
I would not have survived.
You just witnessed this.
Yeah. There was a girl in my class, and I remember the nun brought her to the front of the room and took out a ruler, and she got everyone's attention and make sure everyone was paying attention and watching what was going on, just so, it was almost like and we'll get you next if that's you, and it was, a ruler to make sure it was this like perfect length, and it wasn't, and then the girl got yelled at, and it was just this weird moment of like, is this allowed? It's like
you are the example.
Yeah, and it was just like making an example of someone who probably has a lot of other stuff going on, and even if that's not the case, it's like they're just trying to come to school and like learn, and doing that is already can be a lot for a kid to kind of like have that confidence to get themselves up in there and, you know, spending the day there, and then something like this happens, and now there's like this instilled fear of, oh, I really don't want to mess up, or so-and-so is going to come after me, you know? And at that age, it's kind of just like, what am I supposed to do with that? You know, do I run home and tell my parents? Like, you know, you might just be embarrassed to do that. And so then you kind of just have yourself, and you don't have anyone to confide in at that point. And it's like, so what's going on? What am I supposed to be doing? You know, you kind of just get lost to a point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you want to make a point too, is so you dress how you dress, right? That's you own that. That's being real.
Right.
Now, some people may say, how can you go to church? Now, you don't dress like this while you're singing, right? You have reverence.
Yeah.
However, when people ask, like, how can you dress like this, you know, when you're so religious, right? Like, for some people, they may not make that connection. What do you have to say about that?
I don't think the way someone chooses to present themselves is what determines if they're religious or not, or how religious they are. I think just being able to have like an open conversation, or at least some communication, kind of like, hey, I was just wondering, you know, and being okay with that. But when it comes to how you dress yourself, you know, I think it might be different if, you know, I was wearing a shirt that I hate God, you know, like, right? Then people might be like, you know,
making a statement.
Yeah, like that's a little bit different. But, you know, maybe being a little bit extra with accessories, or, you know, whatever else.
Yeah.
I think if you're really making those judgments of who someone is before you're really actually knowing them or know anything about them, I think it's almost like a wake-up call to kind of just be okay with either letting them do their thing, or if you're really curious about it, asking them, you know? And I think to a point it can be difficult to bring up religion stuff with random people or people you only have had a couple interactions with. But if they're part of the church and they're part of the faith, then it shouldn't be an issue, you know? They should be, you know, feeling good about, oh yeah, this is kind of where I stand with that. But it is kind of a difficult thing to, you know, answer, just because you don't always know what people are thinking. You know, they might have a completely different thought process about who you are, and you'll never ever see them again or have a conversation with them. And that happens, you know? Yeah. But I definitely don't think the way you dress yourself and present yourself has to connect back, you know? The only time I think it does is how you choose to treat people and treat yourself, you know, with kindness and love and all of that. And I think that can show very quickly kind of where you stand with things, you know? Yeah.
And that could be a topic for another episode. I think we can really dive into that expression topic and how people live out their faith, but also express themselves in a certain way. Yeah. So I think that could be a episode we can talk about. But what I wanted to ask this question for maybe both of us, right? What made us as young people say yes to faith and come back, even though we had some of these experiences? Now, so since the topic is about religious education, I mainly can base it off of CCD here at the church, right? So I went to public school primarily, but then I came to the church for education, right? Formation, for my sacraments. And for the most part, it was positive, except the program was positive. I wasn't ready for it. So most of my takeaways happened when I was in high school or post-high school, after I was done with like the formal religious education. Yeah. Right? And so basically, I wasn't ready for it, and so I wasn't really paying attention. I think a lot of kids go through that. What would you say? What made you say, hey, I'm coming back to this?
It was definitely high school for me. And it wasn't a specific experience or anything. It wasn't like I got really into all this bad stuff, and I really, you know, it was just, I had spent, first of all, my entire life going to church every Sunday. My mom's very religious, and in turn my dad kind of followed in her footsteps of, you know, being here at church with her every Sunday and you know, reading the Bible and stuff like that. And so coming from that, I was always part of the church, you know. But I personally, for a while, didn't want to be. When I was in Catholic school, I didn't want to be part of the faith anymore. I felt like it wasn't for me, that it was for these people who made great decisions all the time, who had only pure intentions all the time. And so in my head, I just couldn't be part of that. I couldn't fit in the way I was taught, the way I was shown that this is who's part of this. Yeah. And not necessarily from home, but just from what I was seeing myself and my experiences while in Catholic school. But then going to public school and being able to kind of dive into that self-expression and finding more of who I wanted to be and who I, up to who I am now. Mm-hmm. And realizing that while I can do a lot on my own and figure out a lot on my own, there's a lot that I can't. And there was definitely, that you hear it a lot, like I felt like something was missing. Like there was this little bit of emptiness, this void. And I realized very quickly, like it was a lot of this, and being part of this community that I was missing. But I had to find a way to make it good and important to me without it someone else telling me why it needed to be important or why I needed to do it. I needed to make it personal and make it, for my story and who I am and how I'm using it to kind of like, benefit and make my life better. And, hopefully I'm planning on, raising my kids like that as well. But that had to be my decision. And like I said, it wasn't a specific experience or whatever else. It was just realizing I'm missing something. And I'm at an age now where I feel like I can choose that,
Yeah, I completely agree, because my circumstance is similar, where I was in high school, public school, and I was being challenged on my faith in class, right? And I realized I knew nothing about my faith, because while I had all this like formation, religious education background from the church, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't ready for it, so it didn't stick with me. So when I was then challenged, I had no idea how to talk about it. Yeah. I didn't have answers for people. And so it almost hit me like a truck in class, that if I'm going to keep calling myself Catholic, because people knew me as like the Catholic kid in school, right? I wasn't scared to say that. However, wasn't able to back it up at all. And once that happened, that realization, I said, wow, if I'm going to keep calling myself Catholic, I actually got to learn and go deeper. And so for me, coming back was a quest for knowledge so that I can really back myself up. And then it goes into an identity thing. Who am I as a person? Who am I as a Catholic man, right? Or a young adult becoming a man at the time. And so that's really where I said, yes, I'm back. I want to learn, right? But that was my decision, right? I put things aside and said, this is my decision. Right. Kids, for the most part, I think at a certain age, don't think that way. Something has to happen. And that, for me, it was by chance in that class. For a lot of kids, they put their identity into materialistic things, right? Clothes, makeup, things like that. For me, it was racing. So I used to race cars. So my entire life, we could talk about it in another episode. My entire life was revolved around that. And what happens when these things are taken away? That's what I was asking myself. What happens when these things are taken away? Or if other folks are going through something, maybe their entire life is around whatever it is, X, insert here. And so that's where I see a lot of these kids coming from. So, yeah, and going back to that, like you mentioned, parenting and all that whole dynamic ties into that, because there's a balance between guiding the child and the child guiding themselves. But a lot of times when you throw the child out to the wolves, like I said, they become their own person. So there's like a balancing act, and it's never going to be a cookie cutter model for every person, right? And I think when religious education is involved in this conversation, we almost try to put that cookie cutter model in everyone that doesn't work for the most part. Why? It didn't work for us, but we're still here. So something happened, right? So there's a formula there. Something happened as to why we're still here talking on this podcast today, and others aren't. Maybe I find that funny. Maybe someone who did fit that model isn't here today. Why? These are the questions that we're posing, and it's not going to have an answer here. It's just for people to get the dialogue flowing, and we'll see. We'll see where this goes. Hopefully this sparks some conversations out there. Yeah. So we went over, sort of some of the concerns, some of the problems we personally had. We addressed cultural differences. I even gave you some thoughts on devil's advocate, where we want discipline. What if we want discipline? What if this is necessary? And you came back, the expression, right? You're able to still dress weird, quote. I'm not saying you dress weird. Well. We're able to dress weird or in a different way and still be religious, quote, religious, whatever that means to people. And I think that's important to say here, right? This is bold. This is edgy. This is what you are. This like emo. Am I able to say emo? I don't know. Whatever it is, and you still are involved, right? Who knew that you would be a rapper? You would be. I mean, this is another episode as well. But like, I know things about you that maybe others don't. You're a rapper. Yeah. You're a religious singer. Like you sing at church, but you're also a person here that is real and expresses yourself in a genuine, unique way, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think just like the reminder that being part of the Catholic faith or being religious, you know, on its own, I know for certain religions, you know, you're very modest and some things are very different, and that's kind of like that cultural difference, right? But here at least, you know, you're not expected to wear skirts that go all the way down to your ankles. You're not expected to, you know, look a specific way for you to be able to come in and be part of this. You're not expected to listen to a certain type of music to come in and be part of this. You know, you can absolutely be you, and it's encouraged for you to be absolutely you. You know, that's the most authentic version of you. But, you know, there also shouldn't be like, okay, there's me and then there's religious me, you know. Yeah. It should all kind of tie together. And I feel like I'm finally getting to a point where it's like there's definitely me, but there's religion in that too, you know, like not being afraid to just let my friends know, like, hey, I have church at 6, I'll meet up with you guys like a little bit after that. And it's like, oh, cool, you know. And it's like, I'm still me, I still make the music I want to make, I still, you know, make the friends I want to make, but I choose to incorporate religion into that because I realize, like, I need that without anybody telling me that I do. You know, it's a personal thing by that point, and that makes it part of me. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, and to sort of wrap this conversation up a little bit, a reminder that, you know, there's nothing wrong with Catholic schools. There's nothing wrong with religious education or wanting to put your child in those schools.
Right.
And it's more of just a conversation behind what are some of the shortcomings that may come about, right, for individual children. Because, yeah, putting your child in Catholic school is not for everyone, right? There's some stigma around that. There's some details around that we discussed already in this podcast. But it is a good option, right? I want to put that out there. This is not a bash Catholic school, bash religious education episode. It's just a conversation about some of the shortcomings that come about based on personal experiences. And there's a meme out there, right? There's a meme from Wonder Woman 1984. It's like, life is good, but it can be better, right?
Can be better.
Well, Catholic school is good, but it can be better. And I think this conversation is worthwhile having in this time and age where there's a lot of seekers out there. There's a lot of people lost. There's a lot of people found. There's a lot of people doing a lot of unique things.
Right.
Dressing in a certain way, because that came up a lot today. But you know what? Be you, be real, be authentic, and you're okay.
Right. And I think the last point I want to make, at least, I know we were kind of talking about, like, what's, like, our call to action, especially for, like, this, you know, specifically. And I think it's, a lot of the time, it's, oh, what did you do at school today? You know, and you know, isn't it just so great? You know, what are the good things about school? And that's great, you know, there should be good aspects about school for kids. There should be something they're excited about, whether it's friends, teachers, whatever else.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to bring up the other side of it. Like, what are things that bother you? What are things that you don't enjoy as much? And it might be your, you know, typical, oh, I don't like the rules, you know, I don't like that I have to tuck in my shirt, or I don't like that I have to wear a uniform, you know, and that's fine. But hearing what your child kind of has to say and giving them that safe space of, you know, they're allowed to not like every aspect of it, and they should be able to, you know, feel like they can bring that up and have that conversation with you as the parent and not feel like it's a problem or feel like, you know, they feel bad for not loving every part, you know, and just having this conversation, this open conversation of, you know, how are you doing there? You know, how do you feel like it's affecting you? Is it good or is it not? And what are the kind of two sides of that? But I think that's something to a point, at least for me, because my parents were paying the tuition, I felt bad if I was, you know, having a difficult time, and I felt like, you know, oh, I don't want to upset them. Yeah. So kind of having that open floor of like, I'm here as support, and I understand that, you're not going to always be excited about what's going on, and I'm here to hear that. I think that's kind of important, especially for young kids who have all this discipline kind of being thrown at them, and like, how are they supposed to deal with that without having you as, a shoulder to, cry on, talk to, whatever else. So that was kind of my thought for at least like a call to action, something.
Yeah, that's a great way to close this podcast. And you heard it here, folks. Be you, be real, and have a conversation.
Indeed. Thank you.